We're here with Coach Greg Williams of the Utah Valley University Wolverines. Coach, could you tell us how you got started into wrestling?
Um, well, when I was little, I was competitive with everything I did, and so if I saw somebody doing something, I wanted to try it. And I had an older brother who was 3 years older than me, and he started doing it. I was 4, so my dad said I was too young. Waited till I was 5, and jumped right in, and fell in love with it right away, and had success with it right away. And so I did that for quite a while, and actually had to take a break for a few years because I used to try to do it with people at school. So in other words, I'd get in a lot of fights when I was little. So my parents thought maybe I ought to stay away from it for a while, and got into it again in junior high. Asked them if it'd be all right if I started up, and picked up where I left off. It's just such a great sport. I mean, it's just one-on-one, and the challenges that it presented. I had to kind of start to learn how to lose weight and learn the other disciplines when I was in junior high, and then got to high school, and it was a different level, and I started here and had to work my way up, and was able to have some success early on, and continued to do. I think by the end of my sophomore year, I realized it's something that I was pretty good at. And
Where did you go to high school at?
I'm in California, in San Diego. It was a
Right.
private school. It's called University High School. It doesn't even exist anymore.
Right.
They dropped wrestling a year later after my senior year. But I had my freshman year, we had a coach that wasn't in the school system, and he was a good coach and really good club coach, really good with little kids, and I actually helped him coach that year and learned a lot by just working with youth and having him have me help teach some things. And you learn a lot when you're teaching. You actually learn purpose, the
Right.
purpose of the technique better. And so I think that helped me grow a little bit. But my dad had a decision to make because I was pretty serious about it by that time. I was really good in baseball and decided to give it up to wrestle year round. And so we decided to find a coach, or I was going to move into the best school that was in the area. And we went up to the state meet that year, my freshman year. I just missed qualifying, and so we went up to watch, and he started asking around, and we met a coach that was the assistant coach up at Madera High School up in California in the San Joaquin Valley. And he ended up coming down and coaching me my last 3 years. Was a great technician, and
What was
really,
his name?
his name was Corky Napier.
Okay.
And he had some college experience and was just great in nurturing youth and nurturing, your wrestling skills. And I wrestled year round, went to all the national stuff at the time, and did pretty well. And so I started getting some letters. And then, my senior year, I went and visited some places, and ended up going to Utah State. And it was interesting because I had some schools that were pretty reputable. Most of the schools were writing me. I was ranked anywhere from 1 to 3, depending on what magazine or poll it was. But some of the schools, back then, a full ride wasn't unusual.
Right.
And most of the schools were offering full rides, and there were a couple like Iowa and Arizona State, a couple that offered a little bit less than full. And so I wanted to go somewhere where it was fully paid. And I narrowed it down to Arizona State, and Berkeley dropped. They actually had their coach I liked because he was big in Greco also, which I liked. Oregon State and Utah State, and I just really liked the team there. The coach was, real personable and stuff, and I made some sacrifices by going there because they didn't wrestle year round. They didn't have the funding, and so it kind of hurt my international style. But I was able to work hard and reach my goal to be an All-American. And my last couple years of college, I had been approached by some parents, and they wanted me to coach their little kids club. So my coach was okay with that as long as it didn't interfere with my wrestling. And so I started coaching club at the time. So when I graduated, the job actually opened up at the high school that was right by there. And so I started coaching high school right away when I got done. And I loved coaching. But got out of the teaching field after about 7 years and did some private work, make a little more funds. I got married and was ready to start a family. So I started coaching a private club. Started working with kids like Justin Reese, who's one of my assistants now, and Ben Kerr, who's our first All-American here. And
Yeah, we just talked with Ben, interviewed him not too long ago.
yeah. Josh Wilson, who's right now our one guy who went to nationals last year. He's from our club. So when I got the job here, when I applied here and took the job, a lot of our first good kids were kids I was coaching in club. We had started that club to try to get kids to the college level because we were losing college wrestling. We had lost all of them actually, you know, in 1999, 2000, they dropped BYU's. So we had no longer had a program in the state. So it became even that much more important that we were nurturing, you know, that talent and trying to get these kids out to the college, get them back and, you know, perpetuate that knowledge in our state.
So you answered an ad. Yeah, is that what happened here? How did you kind of get the call about this job
Well,
being available? They're going to wrestle in Utah Valley.
right. Well, I was part of the foundation, Amateur Wrestling Foundation, that we raised money to try to save BYU. And so we had raised $150,000 to try to save it. We didn't, and then all of a sudden Utah Valley, which was at the time Utah Valley State College, they were going to a 4-year program from a junior college.
Right.
And so our committee or our officers approached the school and they started wrestling here. Well, the first application process, I knew both processes because I knew one of the guys who was involved with it, used to coach high school wrestling and had been a good friend of his. And he actually had wrestled at BYU, but he wrestled at Utah State 1 year before his mission. So that's how I'd gotten to know him. And so he wanted me to apply at that time. They want, you know, it's a unique position because you really need to have some good Utah ties. They want this program to use a lot of Utah wrestlers, and Utah has some talent. And if we pool our resources and really develop that talent, you can have a really good program here with a lot of Utah kids, you know, competing here. But when they first did it, Cody Sanderson, Steve Sanderson, who's his dad, you know, who's all the Sanderson boys, Kel's their dad, right, and his brother, you know, John Webb, who had coached at Weber State, there, Joe C., who had coached at Bakersfield and Oklahoma State, and so you had some really good candidates. And I was running a club. I had about 80 kids on my club that were wrestling year-round, and I really liked what I was doing. It gave me the freedom to be with my family, to be able to run this year-round, take them to the meets they needed in the off-season, be able to be with them during the season. I'd go out to all the high schools and work with my kids, you know. So it was a really good situation the first time around. And they hired Cody Sanderson and did a great job technically with everything. You know, just he's a tremendous coach, and he's doing a great job with his brother Kel out at, you know, Penn State. But when he left, when they took the job at Iowa State, they opened it up again, and so I'm hearing who's applying, and it was not a good pool. I mean, they're good coaches. It wasn't that they were bad coaches. It's just they didn't have the Utah ties.
Right.
And really, you needed to have those connections within Utah, and your college experience and the recruiting ability and so forth. So on paper, you know, when I did my first interviews with the AD, it would have looked like I was not the best candidate because I was the only one who wasn't in a college room at the time. But I was the only one who, on my own merits, had developed guys like Ben and Justin and guys who were, you know, going on and were going to be very successful at the college level. But my ties to Utah, you know, were by far the strongest. And so basically, I didn't want to apply. I loved running my club, and we still run a club, but it's such a smaller group compared to what I used to when I could do it full time. But I had to give a big piece of that up in my time with that youth to help develop this program. But our vision's been clear from the beginning. We want to get the best program we can. We want it to be a classy program, but we also want to perpetuate knowledge in Utah. So all of our guys help coach. I mean, we get them involved with club, we get them involved with camps, but we get a lot of them. A lot of clubs now are my ex-wrestlers, either ex-wrestlers from Elite Wrestling or from here. You know, Ben's running a club. We've got Jeb Clark, who runs a club. Jeff Newby runs a club. And then a couple guys who had, Mark Fenwick. All those guys who wrestled for me here or guys who had wrestled for me in club are all running clubs now. And we're just going to keep building on that and building on it. The knowledge that's in Utah now is getting stronger and stronger every year. So we're not only trying to develop a great program here, but we're trying to take this experience that they have and share it, like Jade and Val. Jade and Val will be helping me coach my elite club. Jade helped me last year. Val was hurt, so he couldn't really help. Another guy who's helping me coach is a kid out of Idaho. And we think that a lot of the kids will still go back to their home states. Some will stay. But just to be able to have them on the mat with our Utah talent, we're doing all of our Utah national teams, every age group. The 3 coaches that we have here are now our national development coaches. So we get hands-on with all those kids, which means from 6 years ago when I couldn't get a good kid out of Utah to even come visit. Now every single good kid at least wants to visit. And
Check it out.
yeah, and the top two kids this last year were Grant Lamont out of Maple Mountain and Jed Mellon from Payson. They're both ranked in the top 10 in the country, and we signed them both. You know, and they had other schools after them, but that's because we're working with them hands-on in the off season. So we're putting a lot of extra time in to the development of this program, not just what's going on right now with our
Not
guys.
just as they come in and
Right.
win with the guys you got and then move on. You're bringing them into here
Right,
from young.
developing, yeah.
I like that. So this weekend on Friday, you got the dual tournament against Wyoming, Coach. Tell us what you expect from this tournament and what do you expect the outcome to be?
Well, you know, Wyoming's ranked 16th in the country right now, and they're ranked that way for a reason. I mean, they're well coached. They have good talent in their room. Coach Branch and his staff have done a great job. So, you know, on paper, it looks like we'll get pounded. We're a young team, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think that the matchup is going to be really interesting. You've got two guys that are in the top 25 at 125 with Jade and Tyler Cox. It's going to be a good match. Tyler is a really good wrestler. Val actually wrestled him at Nationals when Tyler was a year older than Val. Val was a junior, and he ended up pinning Val. And Val's, you know, really talented wrestler. So Tyler's got a lot of talent. At 33, they'll most likely wrestle a kid named Eitzen, who Val lost to last year in a first tournament we wrestled in. If Val's healthy enough, I think we can win that match because we've improved a lot. I think we're the better wrestler. 41, we've had close battles with both kids that they could wrestle. And so that'll be a battle, but I think that we can win that. 49 is our favor. They've got a good kid, and he's beaten a couple good kids, the Richardson kid from Wyoming, but I would think the edge would be ours at that. 57, they're ranked, so you know you'd have to give them a pretty good edge there. At 65, I feel like we're favored. We beat them at 74 by 1 point before. We haven't wrestled them at heavyweight, but they'll be favored at 84 and 97. So I think it's going to be a battle, and I think it's our best chance since I've been here to be able to beat them, even though they're ranked pretty high and they have some really good kids.
Who's their head coach over there?
Mark Branch.
Mark Branch. And they have, who else is coaching over there, do you know?
They've got, I'm going to blank it right now.
Travis Schufeld, I know.
Well, Travis Schufeld came over from Nebraska. He's helping coach there, but and I blanked it, and I picture him and everything.
I know, don't you hate that? Do it to me all the time.
Yeah, and he's a bigger guy also, like Branch. So their upper weights are usually
They're tough weights.
pretty good. Yeah, and that's where they'll have the edge on us is in the upper weights. I'm not thinking of it right now, but anyway, he's a good coach. He was a really successful wrestler as well.
Well, great. We want you to tell us who you any story you have, like maybe a wrestling story, a personal one, or maybe from last year or this year, one of the matches that sticks out to you the most.
You mean like as an individual or as a team?
As
or?
an individual, whatever. Overall, we're just looking for your favorite story.
Well, you know, since I've been here, we've had some really tremendous stories. I mean, we had Boise State out here when they were ranked 8th the night before we went and wrestled Iowa in Vernal. You know, we had a guy out of our lineup. They had a couple guys out of their lineup. But, you know, Boise's kind of going to be our rivals, those guys in Wyoming, because they're our closest competition. And, you know, when I first took the job, obviously we're young. We're just barely bringing guys in. We have no depth. Most of the guys are walk-ons because I had 4 scholarships total.
Right.
But they came in here heavily favored, and we ended up upsetting them here in front of a standing room only, 2,000 people. That was one of the best nights as a team.
Nice.
Individually, nothing compares to having Ben place at Nationals, being our first All-American here. And the run that he had because he was unseeded, we ends up wrestling an undefeated number 4 seed in the second round, beats him, you know, wrestles in the quarterfinals against Sanders from Minnesota, who's a 4-time All-American, but at the time, you know, that was his 3rd year. And we had lost to him 2-0 earlier in the Southern Scuffle. We turned it around on him, beat him 5-3 to place, made the semis. Robles, who was the poster child of that tournament, we gave him his best match of the year, lost 4-2. It's a great match. And then Ben beat Mango from Stanford, who's a really good wrestler, and ended up losing for 3rd, 4th. But just a great run, great tournament for him, a great way for him to cap off his career. So individually, that would probably be by far our best experience for an individual. As far as a team, would be our upset win over Boise here at home in standing room, only. We're super excited about the growth of the program. I think signing the two Rousers that day was one of my best days as a recruiter because they're just great kids and they're great talents. We've continued to do that 2 years ago, and then this year we've signed a few guys that are ranked that high, and we're on our way, and we're pretty excited about some of the things that have happened, but some of the things that are going to happen here soon. Well, when I was growing up, it was Dan Gable. I mean, it was right around the time that he had just finished winning the Olympics, and the books were written about him. That was when I was first getting hooked in high school, where I fell in love with it and gave up baseball to do it year round. So he was my first idol, and I don't think you get much better than that as far as his dedication to the sport. And then I think a lot of my heroes, and my high school coach was definitely a hero of mine, Corky. Just great nurturer of people, and like I said, he was very good with the technique, and just a great person. I try to model myself after him as far as how I treat my wrestlers, the way he was that way. And then I think a lot of my wrestlers have been my heroes. I know that I teach them things, but I learn a lot from them too, and I just develop a really, really deep respect for these guys who commit fully to the program, whether it was my club program or here, because we ask a lot. We have really high standards, and we ask a lot, and most of the guys buy in, and when they do that, I'm just really impressed with who they become. I mean, they're already good to start with, but just as people, not just as wrestlers, but as people, I love my guys.
Appreciate it, Coach. Thanks a lot for talking to us.